Suppose I have a group of students who taste a type of ice cream that's made using the pawpaw fruit, so a pawpaw flavored ice cream. And then suppose I measure how much they like the pawpaw ice cream using something we call hedonic scale. Hedonic scales just being a numerical measure of how much people like or dislike a food product. Now suppose you also ask people how often they eat ice cream, from rarely or never to once a year to once a week to every day. I think it makes sense, and I think you'll agree, that the opinion of people who eat more ice cream should count more than people who eat less ice cream. That is, those hedonic scores of people who eat more ice cream should be given more weight relative to those who eat less ice cream. And that's what we're going to do here, and we're going to place more weight on those people using weighted averages. In this video, I want to talk about the differences between a regular average and a weighted average and how it is used in researching consumer food preferences. Suppose in this data we have a certain food and we ask people to rate its likability, and it gives us a hedonic score here, where a higher number means they like the food more. These first four individuals gave it kind of a low ranking, but this last individual gave it a very high ranking. Now if we just calculated the average hedonic score right here, we would just do a simple average and we get 3.6. But think about this, if we're actually selling this food, this person consumes it a lot more than these people. This person also liked the food a lot more. If this person's buying a lot more of this food, we would like to give their opinion greater weight. And so we would like to, this 8, this high favorability, this high likability rating, we want to give it a higher rating because they consume it more. So instead what we want to do is a weighted average, where we're going to calculate the average hedonic score here, but it's going to be a weighted average, weighted by their frequency of consumption here. To show you how weighted averages are calculated, it's really quite simple. You take the weight and multiply it by the hedonic score. So again, multiplying the weight by the hedonic score. This is a sum product. We're getting the sum of the weights times the hedonic score, and then we have to divide by the sum of all the weights. So the sum of all these weights. Okay, notice here the hedonic score goes up considerably because we gave more weight to the person who liked it more, and we gave them a higher weight because they actually buy more of this food. So if you're trying to give documentation to a retailer showing that people actually like this, well, one thing you can do to make your product look better is to use a weighted hedonic score, and you're not doing anything unethical because it actually makes sense to weight this person's opinion more. Let me show you real quick something. Suppose we gave everybody equal weights, where we gave them a weight of 1 for everybody. Well, then our average and weighted is the same thing. Well, that's because a simple average is a weighted average where everybody gets the same weight, and it doesn't matter what the weight is. I can give everybody a weight of 5 and you still get the simple average back. And what we want to do now is to take this concept of a weighted average and apply it to our pawpaw data to calculate the hedonic scores for the pawpaw ice cream that we consumed, giving more weight to people who consume greater amounts of ice cream. And now I want to point out an important Excel formula. So notice when we did this weighted average here, we have this rather complex formula. But of course, the whole purpose of using spreadsheets is to have simpler, easier ways of making complex calculations. And so a better way of doing this, and remember what we're doing with the weighted average is in the numerator, we're going this times this, plus this times this, plus this times this. We're summing the products of the hedonic scores and the frequency of consumption. And so instead of this formula here, we're going to use a sum product formula. It's very easy, it's very useful. We just go sum product of the hedonic scores and the frequency of consumption, and that consumption frequency variable, of course, is our weights, and so we want to divide by the sum of the weights, and we get the same number as we should. Now, of course, most people don't know what pawpaw ice cream tastes like because they've never had or seen a pawpaw. And so in one class I made homemade pawpaw ice cream, brought it to class for students to taste, and we're going to now look at the data from a questionnaire that they completed on their eating experience. In our data, we asked you a question about how much you liked the pawpaw ice cream, and we got these hedonic scores where a bigger number means you like it more, and we asked the frequency with which you consume ice cream. What we're going to do first is we're going to copy each of those columns into an Excel spreadsheet. And we're going to clean it up a bit, make it more visually appealing. Now what I want to do is I want to translate these things into numbers. For instance, a set of 7 equals like and 6 equals like moderately, I want to make it just 6 and 7 because ultimately I want to crunch numbers, do numerical exercises with them. So what I'm going to do first, and I also want to translate these into numbers as well. So let's do the ice cream frequency first. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all of those numbers, all of that data, and then I want to remove duplicates so that I have a list of the unique items that they could select. So I'm going to go to data and remove duplicates. Next, I want to put these in order of highest to lowest frequency. So every day would be highest. Have the responses for consumption frequency in order from most highest consumption to lowest consumption, and I want to get these numerical values where a higher number means they consume it more. So for rarely or never, I'm going to put 1 once every 2 months, 2 once a month, 3 once a week, 4 every day, 5. Okay, so now a higher number means you consume it more frequently. Now I want to create a new column where instead of the text data, say once a month, I want it to give me the numerical data once a month, number 3. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make this a table, and I'm going to call it IC underscore frequency for ice cream frequency. And then I'm going to use our familiar VLOOKUP equation. VLOOKUP, I want to look up that value in my table IC the freq, and then I want to return the second column of this table, 2, and I want an exact match, so 0. So once a month, 3, yes, looks like it does work. And now I can copy and paste this all the way down. Now I want to do the same thing for the hedonic scores. Instead of 7 equals like, I want it to just say 7. Thus, I'm going to go through the same process. I'm going to select all the data. I'm going to remove duplicates. And then I need to put these in the right order, or some order. It can go highest to lowest or lowest to highest. So I'm going to go 1. Okay, nobody actually answered 2. That's why it's not showing up. And actually, now that I think about it, I don't like there not being a absence of number 2 there. So I'm going to rearrange this. And if we went and looked back at the data, we would see that 2 would be disliked very much. Okay. So this is what the data will look like when it's given to us by the survey, and then we want to translate these into just numbers. So 1 dislike extremely, I want it to be 1. 2 dislike very much, I want it to be 2, and so on. And then, like before, I want to give this table a name. I'm going to name it IC_like for ice cream like. And then I'm going to create my hedonic scores here, and I'm going to use my VLOOKUP function. Oh, and I haven't saved this yet, so always do remember to save your work. I'm going to save it in my folder that says pawpaw. Say pawpaw A for analysis. Okay, let's use our VLOOKUP here too. We want to look up this value in IC like. We want the second column, and we want it to return an exact match. And there we go. Okay, and now I'm going to open up a new sheet, and I'm going to copy and paste these data. I'm going to paste special so that I'm not pasting formulas, just the raw data. And now what I want to do is first I want to calculate just the raw average hedonic score. So we have average hedonic score. I just want to take the average value of all the hedonic scores. So average, like that. So 6.04, I'll come back and grab these numbers such that we can remember what they mean. So this means average hedonic score 6.04. The average person just liked it moderately. But now what we want to ask is whether people who are higher levels of ice cream consumption people, whether they like the pawpaw more than people who consume ice cream less. So now what I'm wanting to do is give more weight to the hedonic scores for people with a higher number for ice cream frequency. Because remember how ice cream frequency went. The higher the number, the more they consumed it. So this means I want to use these as weights, and I want the hedonic score for someone who consumes ice cream every day to count basically 5 times as much as the hedonic score for someone who consumes ice cream only rarely or never. So we want to do a weighted average. So weighted hedonic score, weighted by frequency of ice cream consumption. And we're going to do that like this. We're first going to do a sum product of ice cream frequency and hedonic scores, and then we're going to divide that by the sum of all the ice cream frequency numbers. And notice here we get a slightly lower number, which suggests that when you give more weight to people who like ice cream even more, the average likability of pawpaw's ice cream goes down. And this is important because when you're actually evaluating whether consumers will like pawpaw ice cream, obviously the opinions of those who buy more ice cream should matter more, and that's what we're doing in this weighted average scheme.